Welcome to the Classroom Café, where it's all about brewing the conversation between fellow educators. This special presentation is brought to you by the United Federation of Teachers and the union's Member Assistance Program. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this podcast inspires you, nourishes you, and motivates you. Now let's get started. Hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Classroom Café. I'm Selma Williams, and as usual, I'm joined by our illustrious co-host, Janisa Costa.
You are very kind, Selma. Hi, everyone. I'm Janisa Costa.
Today, we are joined by our special guest, Mr. Chaz.
Hello, hello.
Mr. Chaz is a former Montessori teacher who is beloved all over social media for his motivational content geared towards helping parents and educators manage difficult situations with children. Welcome, Mr. Chaz.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Hopefully I can help some people out there in the world today, give you some new tools, expand perspective a little bit. Happy to be here. Hope to help.
Yes, that's what we need.
We're very excited to have you and that you can set out some time from your busy schedule to join us and talk to our listeners.
Well, I'm happy to be here. This is something I'm super passionate about, and I've had a lot of experiences in my life where people have kind of reached back to me and believed in me and supported me and given to me even their time, their knowledge. And so now I try my best to make time to reach back and help others who are struggling, because I know what it's like to struggle. So yeah, I'm here to support.
So one of your quotes that drew me in was you said that I help turn interactions from war to peace. I help you turn power struggles to cooperative independence. I translate the child's language in a way that an adult can understand. Care to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, that is just a description, because I know, we get into these power struggles. We get into a lot of challenges with children. And it really comes from this approach that I have that we could talk about in 3 words: see, guide, trust. And really the idea behind it is that we have to be able to see a person, see a child before we guide them. Traditionally, in the classroom, in leadership, and in so many professions, especially us as adults when it comes to kids, we want to just give them our years of experience and our guidance. And we think that if you just listen to me and just listen to the things that I have to tell you from all the lessons I've learned, because I'm wise and I have all this experience, life will be good, right? And where we mess up is we're trying to guide in the dark. We're not even seeing them. We're just trying to reach out to them, but we're not connected. Our guidance often does not connect with the people that we're trying to guide. And now my focus is with, parents and teachers and caregivers and nannies with children. But this is something that we can see in a lot of places, and probably even in whatever your job is as a teacher, or you work somewhere else. Especially if you're in a big organization, this is something you probably see often, where leadership is trying to guide you or tell you what to do, and you feel like they don't understand, or you feel like they're not solving the problem because they haven't taken the time to really see and talk to you and collaborate with you. And it makes all the difference. So traditionally, what we try to do is just guide first. And it's we're trying to guide in the dark, and we're trying to bring them along, and we're surprised when they won't willingly come with us. So we end up kind of yanking them through our guidance. And, in classrooms, this might look like, harsh punishments and rewards, trying to just guide them on the right path. But when we see them first, 2 big things happen. One, it's illuminating. It's it turns the light on in the room. So when we reach out to them to try to guide them, we can actually reach out to them and connect with them and reach them. That's one big thing that happens. Our guidance is a lot more accurate and helpful for what they need. Now, the other big thing that happens when people feel seen, they are way more likely to go on that journey with you willingly, right?
Mm,
They're way more likely to take your guidance and reach back out to you so that you can guide them and help them along on their journey and their process. Um, and so, I say all that to say, talking about how uh, this is relates to adults, because a lot of times we have a hard time really seeing that connection. But if we just kind of look at, the bosses that we've had in our lives,
Mhm.
anyone who's had a few bosses has probably had a boss who they didn't get along with, they didn't feel seen by, they didn't feel
mhm.
Oh,
connected
yeah.
to. And that boss, let them try to tell you to do something, they are, you're going to have more of a reaction. You're going to be less likely to do that willingly and take their guide or do whatever they're asking you to do, and put your all into it. But
Mhm.
Mhm.
now think about the boss that you do feel seen by, that you do feel understood by. That person, you know, they'll tell you to, as one of my colleagues says, that person, they tell you to uh, drive to Africa. You're figuring out how to build a bridge, right?
Mm.
You'll go the extra mile for people that you feel seen and understood by and connected to.
Mhm.
This is so true. And if we take a step back and really look, we can see this in our adult lives, but it's also true for children too.
Yeah. So the first step that you shared is to see the kids, right? See them for who they are, what's going on for them. What does that look like in in the classroom? Like, how do our educators see their students? What are ways that they can see them? Because they're only with them, right? They're with them for a good amount of the day, but it's not. It's different. It's a structured classroom. It's a structured setting. It feels different. So what are some ways that our educators can see our students like you were just sharing in order to connect with them better?
And the way you do this is going to be different depending on the age where the development of the group of children you're working with.
Mhm.
But really, you have to take the time to really observe and you know create an environment of safety first, so that children can show up as themselves. Because a lot of times, if a person doesn't feel safe, they're not going to show up as themselves,
Mhm.
and then it's hard to see them because you're really just seeing the shell of what they're showing. And especially as children get older, the more you see this, the more they
Mhm.
show you just a masked version of who they are. So
Yeah.
first thing you have to do is create safety. Now, with younger children, they're going to be more likely, they're not masking as much as older children are. But with younger children, it's still taking that step back to really observe. And depending on, for, especially we're talking about 5 and younger, 8 and younger, but especially 5 and younger, we're talking about preschools, there tends to be not as much of a structure of curriculum that you have to teach. Once you start getting in the public schools, there's specific curriculum, and it goes fast, and they want you to teach to the test. And that can make really seeing students more difficult because, again, we're spending so much time just trying to guide them and tell them what to do,
Mhm.
tell them what to learn. But if we take a moment at the beginning of the year, first month, I said a moment, but really seeing is an ongoing process. But
Mhm.
Mm.
we can be really intentional about when we're first meeting children
Yeah.
to set up activities, to set up space, to set up things where they can express what their interests are, where they can explore their interests, where they can work together, where they can just be themselves around you. You can create conversations the older they are. You can create play situations, and they're going to show you who
Mhm.
who they are. And as class sizes get bigger and as children get older, it may be a little bit more difficult. There may be, it's difficult in some ways and easier in other ways. It's, younger children can be more difficult to see because they're not articulating themselves as well. And a lot of what they're communicating is through their behavior. And so that really takes observing and interpreting and watching them over a period of time to learn what their behavior is communicating. And
Mm.
with older children, they can talk more, they can express more, they do have more ideas to share and more to add to the conversation. Um, and so you have to know where your classes and generally is where they are in their development, and then start to understand, create an environment, create situations and opportunities for them to be themselves. And if there's time, especially if there's a child who's struggling, a lot of times, a child is struggling. Maybe they're talking in class or they're goofing off or they're saying things that, are hurtful. And the first thing that we want to do is just judge them, label them, the bad kid, aggressive kid, or lazy, or whatever it is.
Oppositional.
Define, and we label
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
and that's one that becomes the way that we see them, that becomes the way that we treat them, that becomes, the label that they have to now live up to. They're like, oh, I'm bad. Oh, I'll show you bad. Or,
Mhm.
or, oh, since I'm already bad, like, what's the point of even trying? What's the point of even doing anything different? We have to see the best in children to bring out the best in children. And
Yeah.
so when, when we have these kids who are challenging us, instead of thinking like, this is such a bad kid, we can instead kind of reframe him like, I wonder what they're struggling with.
Mhm.
I wonder what's going on, especially like, I get stories all the time because I have these conversations on social media about people, even some of our, gifted kids, right?
Mm.
Who don't, maybe they don't get an A on the test, or, maybe they get a B or C or D or an F. And, a lot of times what these kids are met with are, you're not living up to your potential. You're not trying hard enough. You can
Mhm.
do better, especially for a gifted and talented kid, right? Instead of really like, hey, what's going on? Typically
Yeah.
ace these tests. Is there anything that I can help you with, or anything that I can support you with? Or, why do you think you didn't do as well on this test, right? And that
Mhm.
requires a level of safety to
Yeah.
have that conversation, which means that we have had to kind of already establish a relationship and connection where we're not judging them, and they have to have those experiences with us to feel that sense of safety. And then they can tell you what's going on, what they were
Mhm.
struggling with.
Mhm.
Now, a 3-year-old may not divulge the information, or they may not divulge it in a way that is easily understandable, but we have to take the time to really see before we try to just guide and judge and label.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm hearing be curious, right? As part
Yeah.
of seeing the students or seeing the child in order to guide them, we need to be curious about what's going on for them and try to avoid judgments whenever possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you want to stay in curiosity,
Mhm.
because we don't know everything. Especially, we don't know everything. Now we may build a relationship and get to know a child really well, but at the end of the day, they are the expert on themselves,
Yeah.
and they're the expert on themselves. And they're still learning about themselves, right? And they're still
Yeah.
discovering themselves, and they're still uncovering themselves. So,
Right.
let's avoid telling children who they are before they have the opportunity to figure it out for themselves. And let's learn, about how they see themselves and what they know about themselves so that we can better reach them and connect them and support them and help them. And then when we do that, all of our, academic goals or whatever, we're going to be in such a better position to help them with that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, when
Yeah.
we don't have the relationship, when we don't have the connection, when we don't have the safety, then we have very little hope at authentically really supporting them and helping them in a meaningful way.
even as adults, we're still learning every day. We're still
Oh, yeah.
figuring ourselves out every day.
Right.
And so, we don't often think about children as being the experts on themselves because we're used to this power and control sort of narrative and like
Mhm.
dynamic with kids. But they are, just like you said, like they're with themselves day in, day out. They're with themselves every day. They may not always make the best decisions where they need some guidance, but they are the experts on themselves and they're learning and they're figuring it out just as we are learning and figuring it out every day. And so
Mm.
holding that or creating curiosity or being curious in order to create that safe space makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, thinking about going into a fresh school year, this is
Mhm.
like a perfect podcast to air because this is the ground floor, right? This is the time when you can set the stage for the remainder of the school year, like beginning that seeing process, right? Like you said, I like that you said it goes through. It's kind of ongoing because things happen and life kind of shifts and changes, but always being in that um, inquisitive state and state of inquiry with regard to students, your children, just children in general, without
Mhm.
judgment. I think is it's a perfect time for that. So then, how do you, once you start the seeing process, transition to that guiding process, and how gentle or how much of the cue comes from the student?
And this is the part where I'm going to give you some like real practical advice. I'll share like a script here. Now, here's what the caveat is. I always say, here's the script, don't use it. Right. And the reason I say that is because when I talk about the script, the goal is to just say is an example of the overall approach and way to communicate and think about this situation. And scripts can be helpful when we're in a survival state and we don't have access to all of our skills,
Mhm.
and we just need something to kind of pull out of our back pocket to say that could be helpful rather than not having anything to say or not, or resorting back to our default of how we were raised or, the teachers we're used to, or, just our default mental models. So, here's the script, don't use it. You got to internalize it, make it your own, and let it come out from you, because authenticity is a really big, important part too. Now, I
Yeah.
talked about seeing the other person, but really a part of this see, guide, trust, and I'll talk about trust soon, is that it's part of it is seeing yourself too. Because it all starts with us, right? It all starts with our state. And, are we in a position to uh, provide empathy? Are we triggered by something? Is something that is a trigger that we have, is it being triggered by, this
Yeah.
child or this class or this situation? And it really starts with us being aware of that stuff. Now, in terms of the guidance, here's the script. You want it next time. Or, I might say it more like you were trying to, if I was from the South, I might say, you're finna, but you want it next time, right? You wanted the Legos next time, ask for some Legos, or next time ask for a turn, or next time grab some Legos and bring them to your space and play with them. You wanted that toy. Next time, ask for a turn, or next time, ask if you can play. Right. The next time, the guidance can be
Mhm.
really, I mean, a lot of things depending on the situation, and there's a lot of kind of discretion there. There's a lots of ways to problem solve, but it comes after the you want it, you were trying. It's after the understanding of what that child was trying to do. I'm going
Right.
to tell you guys a story, and it kind of goes with a little bit of the script that I just said, and where I use this, um, and it's gonna help a little bit with the practical application. So I was in a classroom and I was talking to some teachers, and I was talking to the teachers, heard this loud little, yeah, let's hit the mic here. I
Boy.
hope that this loud Lego noise, and it was what happened. It was there was two kids sitting on one side of the table and one child sitting on the other side of the table. And this one child was kind of trying to yank the bucket of Legos away from the two children who were playing with the Legos. And it became this big, loud thing. And they're like, oh, we intervened because it looked like they were about to hit each other with the Legos. Like, okay, we're getting into some physical altercation. Let's intervene here. And so I pulled the child aside who kind of went over to the two children who were playing and started to kind of grab the Legos. And I said, you wanted to play with the Legos, you wanted to play with all the Legos. You wanted all the whole bucket of Legos. And I was trying to see him this moment, right? So you got to trust, like you wanted the bucket of Legos to yourself. And he said, no, I wanted to play by myself. And I'm like, oh, okay. You wanted to play by yourself. Next time, grab some Legos, take them to the spot you want to play and build there. And if you want more, go grab some more, just get a handful. And so I originally, when I tried to see, I was wrong, right? And if I just would have guided him and told him what to do ahead of time, I would have never figured out what the actual problem was, what he was actually trying to do.
Yeah.
And then he corrected me. And that's a good thing. A lot of adults, when, they get corrected by children, that's a trigger. Like, don't talk back to me. That's disrespectful, right?
Yeah.
We get into this whole thing. But, instead, okay, that's the problem. And now we're all on the same page about what the problem is. Now we can work together to solve the problem. And so that's what the next time is, right? And it's not a lot of words. This was in particular, this is like a 3-4-year-old classroom. So not using a lot of words. You want it next time. But as time, as they get older, maybe there's more words, maybe it's a little bit more conversation on the understanding and seeing them. And again, you got to meet them where they're at within their development, but we got to see them first. And if they correct us, that's a good thing. I'm grateful he felt safe enough to correct me and tell me what was really going on. So then I could actually provide some guidance that would actually solve his problem, that would actually help him, as opposed to what I thought would be helpful in this situation. And so that's an example of seeing and guiding. Now, the trust piece, because I haven't talked about this. Trust, that is all about trusting that everyone is doing their best. Everyone out here is trying, right? Now, you may not be at your best, but we're all trying our best, right? And I'll get in a conference and I'll ask people like, who here doesn't try their best, right? And no one raises their hand, or someone will raise their hand and, I'll ask, okay, well, why don't you try your best? Why aren't you trying your best? And like, oh, I got something on my mind, or I'm tired, or something to give a reason of like why they are not doing their best. And like what you're expressing, what you're telling me is this is why you're not at your best. Now, it sounds like, you're doing your best with the tired body that you have, with the resources that you have access to in that moment. And if we can just see people in this way, right? I'm talking about teachers, I'm talking about children, I'm talking about partners, spouses, I'm talking about friends. We can see that everyone is trying their best with the skills, knowledge, and resources they have access to in that moment. It will be a huge game changer in the way that we're able to connect and support people that we care for.
Yeah. And that's something that is, you talk about it in the context of students, but that's something that's so relevant for us too, with our interpersonal relationships with other adults.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. So another kind of example, and you asked me the question earlier. I translate the things that happen with children to adults. This is another thing, especially for those, whether you're in leadership or you're a teacher. This may resonate, especially if you're in early childhood. I was kind of doing this talk at a recent conference, and afterwards, a director came up to me and they were talking about how they were having a hard day and they were kind of like stressed out. And then someone, called out, right? And said that they weren't coming into work that day, or they were coming in late. The way that this leader responded was, you need to get here right now, right? And
Boy.
Yeah.
this is, she said, as soon as she sent the text message, she's like, I kind of felt bad, but like that's how she felt. And like she was already kind of having a stressful day. And when we are in a survival state or an emotional state, it's harder for us to access things like empathy. It's legitimately harder for us to do those things. And while normally this leader, this is the leader who actually invited me to the conference. So I actually had an opportunity. There's now opportunities to talk to a lot of people who are under this person's leadership. And, for the most, they were singing her praises and saying that like she's a great leader and she really sees and connects, like, this is a really great leader. But in that moment, she had a hard time accessing empathy as she normally would. And she was like, you need to get here right now. Knowing that the person that she was texting was someone who generally was, kind of on time and punctual, but she was having a moment. And so then afterwards, she sent the text. I think she got a phone call or she got a text back from this person. And they were like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was just in a car crash. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm trying to get my car together and everything. And she felt so bad.
Yeah.
And it's just a testament that like, one, we got to check in with ourselves, right? Before we react to people, and maybe take a moment to pause so we can stretch our reaction into a response. Even we got to give it a little bit more time. You got to breathe. You got to go on a walk. We got to, we got to hug someone, whatever. We got to take a drink of water. We need to stretch our reaction into a response so we can respond thoughtfully and intentionally, maintain safety, and we can actually, see the other person and support the other person so that we can go on this journey together, more effectively.
You highlighted two important things there, something that I wasn't even thinking about, right? Like that this is applicable for, adults in leadership and how you manage your team, right? Because oftentimes we think, you're guiding students, you're guiding people that are, younger or, with impressionable minds. But this is completely and totally applicable to those administrators out there, those the principals, the superintendents that, they should see their staff, right? Or endeavor to see their staff and lead with that curiosity as well, because it fosters a healthier work environment. And then you highlighted because that was going to be my question, a great way to turn it around, right? Instead of continuing along that path of judgment and I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is, but down the path of judgment, that principal apologized, was able to turn back and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun there, or I made a statement that I shouldn't have in the moment. And that speaks volumes because, I don't want to speak for our listeners, right? But I know that's something that a lot of educators struggle with, right? Administration and struggles in those arenas.
100%. And, I think that's why I worked, and a little bit about me. I started off as a Montessori teacher. And then as I learned and grew and made mistakes and got better and better, people, started to ask me for advice kind of casually in the break room. I started to offer it. They started to come back and say how life-changing or like how day-changing it was, how it changed the child's day and their day and how impactful it was. And that's when a light bulb went off for me, that if I can impact I love impacting my community of little humans, but if I could
Mhm.
impact teachers, my impact would be exponential. So then I became an educational
Yeah.
specialist, where my role was to support and really support all the education portion of 10 different schools.
Mm.
And so in that position, I was not only able to be really kind of boots on the ground and supporting, teachers, and often, honestly, because of realities of early childhood, covering for a lot of teachers. But I was also to be able to be in the spaces of the office where the directors were and have conversations about things they were pushing down to, the
Mm.
teacher. And I was also able to be in the corporate space where they were talking about initiatives that they wanted to start, and challenges that we're having, and they're pushing things down all the way to the very top to the owner of the company. And I saw how, the attitudes and approach of the things that the own people at the very top, the things that they would do, how that would be
Mhm.
pushed down from the owner to the director of operations, to the district directors, to the directors of the individual schools, to the teachers, to the students, to the different power dynamics amongst the students. And you don't care for your teachers. Caring for the teachers is caring for the students, right? If the
Mhm.
Mhm.
teachers aren't cared for, then the students can't be cared for. So we have to, uh, uh, and that's a big struggle a lot of the times. Um, you know, Teachers may be, wanting to, try to do their best in the classroom that they are in, but they may not feel cared for or seen or understood themselves. And so that makes it harder for them to provide that empathy and that caring
Yeah.
and that seeing and that understanding to the children. Right. And,
Absolutely.
and, and in early childhood, there's a lot of systemic issues, uh, and that aren't the direct, the direct cause isn't the necessarily the leadership in your building, but because there are these larger issues in early childhood, it makes it so that leadership in your buildings is so much more important. Like healthy, intentional leadership is so important in early childhood, because if often teachers get, you know they get neglected into um, survival mode. And
Mm.
from that place, it
Yep.
is hard to provide empathy to a bunch of,
Yeah.
children who, um, are all different places in development with all different, skills and personalities and
Mhm.
Mm.
dynamics. So yeah, this is important all around.
Yeah.
Um, 100%.
Before we transition to trust, because I definitely want to get there, I I know a lot of our conversation has been geared towards the classroom
Yeah.
and seeing and guiding in the classroom. But if we could shift for a little bit and just talk about how this could be applicable at home, right? The children who see you at your best and you're not so best.
Yeah.
How do we, as parents, I'll include myself in this bucket, start that from that seeing standpoint, especially for those who haven't?
Yeah. So, you still want to, as a parent, you still want to do a lot of observing and try to take the time to observe and watch and listen. The big
Mhm.
thing is really listening to children and to what they're saying.
Mhm.
It's so easy to dismiss children because, especially young children, half the time, like they don't, understand the full context of things, and they mess
Mhm.
things up all the time. And I notice that us as adults have a tendency in parents, and probably parents especially, because they're, around their children, especially during a pandemic, around their children so much, it is so easy to dismiss what they say and what they do.
Mhm.
And the first step to getting a child to listen to you is to listen to them. And
Mm.
what do I mean by that? So we have an example. Let's say a child's jumping on the couch, right? Um, child jumping on the couch, jumping on the couch. And we have a rule. There's no jumping on the couch allowed in my household. That's the rule. Don't jump on the couch. And
Mhm.
what does your young child do, right? They get up, they jump on the couch and yell at them. We say, I told you, stop jumping on the couch. And then,
Mhm.
they might freeze up a little bit and they sit down maybe, or they run away, but they might, they sit down, they listen to you for a second. And then a few minutes later, what are they doing? Right back, jumping on the couch,
Mm.
jumping on the
Yep.
couch. And what we don't understand is that their behavior is communicating something to us, and we're not listening to it, and we're ignoring it, or we're ignoring it, or we're not understanding it, or we're dismissing it, but we're not seeing it. Often, especially for young children, they have this need for physical activity throughout the day, right? They need that, and it's really important for their development too. And I always say young children know everything, intuitively know everything that their bodies and brains need to do to learn and grow. Physical activity, climbing, those are things that their body needs to do to learn and grow. Now, they may not know that it's not okay to climb on the oven or the glass table. They may not understand where to do these things in this world that we've, created for them, that they found themselves in, but they know they need to jump and climb and do physical activity. And
Mhm.
so when that child is jumping on the couch, they're likely communicating that they have this need for physical activity that they need to express, that they need to use. Instead of saying, no, stop, don't use your physical activity, we can see them and see like, you have a lot of energy, or you want to jump around, or you want to play, or you want to, whatever they're trying to do, in whatever way they understand that, they got energy in their body, and, they're trying to use it. And like, I see that. I see you.
Mhm.
Let's use that energy. Let's have a dance party, or let's climb up and down the stairs, or let's go into the playroom and, do gymnastics, or let's use this little $50, Fisher Price trampoline and jump on that. Or let's put the cushions on the ground and play the floor is lava. Whatever is acceptable, what in your situation, in every household, and things are going to be different. But
Mhm.
seeing what that need is, and teaching them and showing them where they can meet that need. And the other part of it is not just the need, it's also skills. Another example is, you get on the phone, and what do they want to do? They want to, like, all of a sudden they want your attention now, and they want to, like, talk to you, and they got a million questions to ask you, right?
Oh yeah.
And you know, one thing that we can do, instead of, just like, no, stop, don't, yeah, we can set boundaries around it, but we give them something to do. Like, how do you get my attention in a more appropriate way? When I
Mhm.
want you, and I need you, or I want you, and I'm on the phone, is there a visual timer that I have that I could look at to know how long you're going to be on it? And do I, hold your hand to let you know that I, want your attention without interrupting? What is the appropriate way to solve the problem that they are faced with? But before we do any problem solving, we got to see what the problem is. And that takes listening, and that takes, often observing. And when I say listening, not just to their words, especially the younger they are, they're not using as many words, listening to their behavior, because behavior is
Mhm.
communication.
Yeah. And that everything that you just shared, it makes me think about my morning this morning. So I have a 1.5-year-old, and he is loving playing with the toilet lately. Like putting his hand in the water.
Yeah.
And when I'm trying to get ready in the morning and like get us out the door so I can get to work and he can get to daycare, it was like, and I was in my own emotions this morning too. Been having a rough week. And so this morning when he did it, I was just like, what did I say to you? Stop playing in the toilet. But everything that you just said, right? Giving the example of jumping on the couch is not that they want to jump on the couch, it's an example of another behavior, right? It has me reflecting on like, he's being curious. He's being curious about the water that he sees. Unfortunately, it's in a toilet bowl, but like he's being curious about the water and the movement of it, right? And like maybe, I'm just thinking about something that I can start to implement with him on the weekends or even at night, right? Is giving him like a little bit of water, like a small dish with a little bit of water that he can splash in, that he can play around in, that he can like explore and be curious about water. Hopefully,
senses. Yeah.
yeah, and hopefully stop playing with the water in the toilet bowl because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's experimenting with the properties of liquid, and
yes,
the toilet might have its own set of like fascinations
sure.
that go along with it, and there might be even an opportunity. Maybe if there's something he's like super curious about, maybe not while you're trying to get ready to go to work, but there might be some safe way that we can explore this strange new thing called the
Mhm.
toilet that we eventually would like for him to use,
Yes.
right? Right. And there's also, this is not on topic but off topic, but in terms of potty learning,
Mhm.
notice I didn't say potty training, potty learning, potty
Mhm.
mastery.
Ah.
There's a lot of indirect learning that we do all with children all along the way before they're ready to actually put their poop and pee in the toilet.
Yeah.
And he might be communicating that he's ready to do a little bit of indirect learning. And that might be an opportunity for you in a non-stressful way, as opposed to just doing it all. Oh, you're 2.5 now, you're about to go, to preschool, and they said that you got to get potty trained. So let's sit you on the toilet and just, go
Mhm.
at it. Yeah, I expect you to be pooping by the end of the week. I took work off. You got to be pooping and peeing on the toilet by the end of the week, and like it'd be a really overwhelming experience. There's a lot of indirect learning that we can do. Now, again, there's probably a time and place that you want to set aside to do that,
Yes.
as best you can.
Yeah.
But there's another thing too that's, I'd say, almost one of the most important things I'm going to say. This is the whole podcast episode. This is the most important thing I'm going to say of the whole thing. Perfect doesn't exist. There
Mm.
is no mountaintop of perfect parenting or teaching or whatever. Perfect does not exist. Avoid being a perfectionist, be an improvementist. The goal isn't to be perfect every day. The goal is to improve a little every day. And so when we mess up, that's a part of the learning process, right? That's part of the learning process of being a parent. When he messes up, it's part of the learning process of being a kid. And kids, they're going to mess up a lot. And so instead of trying to pretend like we're perfect and we're infallible and we don't make mistakes, like a lot of our parents try to show and communicate.
Mhm.
um, Instead, we want to show them that mistakes are normal and show them how to make mistakes, right? Let's normalize mistakes. Let's normalize messing up. Let's normalize how we apologize. What does an apology look like, and what does a genuine apology look like and feel like and sound like? How do I do it? What does it feel like? And then part of that, especially with young children, is showing them is when we mess up, we blow up, we do things that are out of that are not aligned with our values. We
Mhm.
can come back and apologize and be like, you know what? Uh, Earlier I yelled, and I'm yelled, or I yelled, or I grabbed you, or I said something that was really hurtful to you, and I'm sorry. That's not the parent I want to be. That's not the person I want to be. I'm sorry about that. Next
Yeah.
time when I'm overwhelmed or frustrated or angry or whatever the emotion is, I'm going to take a deep breath, or I'm going to find another way, or I'm going to, whatever you're going to do differently next time. Right now, how we traditionally, well, the way we do apologies as adults and, to kids is so tainted, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
E-
Backhanded.
First of all, with apologies, a lot of times, if we do muster up an apology, a lot of times we'll be like, I'm sorry I yelled at you, but you need to listen the first time, right?
Yeah.
Which completely invalidates. That's not us taking accountability for what we did. We're still blaming the another person for our actions, right? We take full accountability for what we did. No need to confess somebody else's sins. So, one thing I say is keep your butts in your pants, right? Like there's no room
I
for it
like that.
in the apology. Another thing too, that where we mess up with apologies is, especially with teaching kids, is we try to force them to apologize and like say you're sorry, 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 to the
Uh,
point where
Mhm.
children, will be like, sorry, they'll hit someone,
yeah. It
it
doesn't
will
have
be
meaning behind it. They're just saying
Got
it
it.
because an adult told them to do it.
right. And it becomes this kind of get out of jail free card, and it's not genuine. And then when someone does actually apologize, but it's forced, it still doesn't feel good. Like, who wants a forced apology? Like, is it even an apology
Right.
if it was forced? I would say no. I would say no, because part of it is an expression of like I felt bad that I did that.
Mhm.
My bad. Like like it is an expression of sorrow, right? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So um instead of doing that, uh give them time. Now you can encourage them, you can, especially when they're young, like teach them, about the process of it. Like, they do need to learn, like, this is something that something you can do in the process of trying to repair and trying to make it better, but it's not something where we're forcing it on children. And I'm thinking, especially, I don't know if you watch those old, those super nanny videos. She's got like kind of these like a 5 step or whatever step process, and part of it is like ignore the child until they
Mhm.
apologize. Don't give them any love or anything until they apologize. And like, that's not really teaching a genuine apology. And
Yeah.
the hard part there for us adults, and where we might be triggers, a child might choose not to apologize in the moment, right? They may not want to, especially if there's a lot of pressure on it, and they may not be ready to apologize. And a lot of times we're triggered by this as adults because, like, oh, I need to restore justice. I need to close the loop. And that needs to happen right now, right?
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, if we give it some time to breathe, 9 times out of 10, we revisit that later, or even we don't revisit it later, children usually come back and they'll apologize and they'll say that they're sorry after some time has passed, that they didn't do it and they didn't do it in the beginning. And then when they do it, it's actually genuine. And sometimes even in our adult conflicts, we need a little bit of time to before we can really engage in a genuine conversation. We need a little time to kind of decompress, a little time away from the conflict, and to come back to it.
Mhm.
And so really teaching how to make mistakes, how to make apologies, how to repair, relationships, how to repair if we've, hurt something, and it may not even just be an I'm sorry, right? It could be a hug, it could be a high five, it could be inviting the child into play. There's so many ways to kind of repair and apologize and to make amends.
Yeah.
And so we really constrict children and taint apologies when we force them.
I think it's been a robust conversation and definitely something that's necessary for our listeners. And so I think this is a great time to talk about where our listeners can find you. Do you have
Mhm.
events coming up, a website, things like that?
Oh man, yeah. I'm in the process of setting up our website, but the places you can find me and follow me, and the place where you can get like support, is I share, free content in many places on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, a little bit on LinkedIn, and I also have a podcast on all podcasting platforms. You can find me on social media as Mr. Chaz, MRCHAZZ. On TikTok, it's Mr. Chaz, Mr. Chaz. But that's, if you type in MRCHAZZ, you should be able to find me. I'm the guy with the megaphone. And then my podcast is Mr. Chaz's Leadership, Parenting, and Teaching Podcast. And then you can get one-on-one coaching with me through www.patreon.com/Mr. Chaz. And then you can just email me. It's chazlu@yahoo.com if you're interested in me coming up and doing a speaking engagement. We have a really good time where it's a lot of learning, but it's also a lot of interaction. It's a lot of fun, and it just gets better and better every time I do it. But you can also reach out to me, email me, message me, whatever. It's all linked in my social media bios so that you can find me, reach me, and maybe I can come out to your school and, do a talk.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taz. This has been such an incredible and meaningful conversation. We appreciate you taking the time, sharing your expertise with us and with our listeners. It's been really wonderful.
Once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Classroom Café. If you are a UFT member, the Members Assistance Program can be reached at 212-701-9620 or at mapinfo@uft.org.